Have you ever noticed that modern cars all look a little bit serious? Today, headlights are always visible. They sit there permanently, staring at the road. But for a few decades, some of the coolest cars ever built had a secret. At the push of a button, their headlights would suddenly rise out of the bodywork. It looked almost like the car was waking up. Pop-up headlights weren't just functional, they had personality. People loved them, kids loved them, enthusiasts still love them today. So if they were so cool, why did they disappear? Why can't you buy a brand new sports car with pop-up headlights anymore? The answer involves engineering, safety laws, changing technology, and one problem that nobody could solve. Let's find out why one of the most iconic automotive features in history completely vanished. Most people think pop-up headlights existed simply because they looked cool, but that's not actually why they were invented. Back in the 60s and 70s, car designers faced a difficult problem. Exposed headlights created aerodynamic drag. The faster a car moved, the more air resistance those headlights created. Sports car manufacturers wanted sleek, low noses that could cut through the air. Pop-up headlights provided the perfect solution. When the lights weren't needed, they could hide completely inside the bodywork. The front of the car became smooth and streamlined. Then, when night arrived, the headlights would rise into position. This gave manufacturers the best of both worlds: good visibility at night and better aerodynamics during the day. What started as a practical engineering solution soon became a design trend. The 80s and 90s were the golden age of pop-up headlights. They were everywhere. Japanese sports cars had them, European exotics had them, American performance cars had them. Some of the most famous cars ever made used those kind of headlights. The Mazda RX-7, Toyota Supra, Honda NSX, Ferrari Testarossa, Lamborghini Countach, Chevy Corvette, and many more. At one point, pop-up headlights became a symbol of performance. If a car had them, it instantly looked faster, even when parked. Manufacturers realized customers loved the feature, so they kept using it. Some cars even developed unique personalities because of their headlights. When they opened, it looked like the car was raising its eyebrows, or winking, or waking up. Few automotive features have ever created such an emotional connection between a machine and its owner, but hidden underneath that cool appearance were several major problems. Pop-up headlights were surprisingly complicated. Every time you pressed the headlight switch, motors had to activate. Gears had to turn, linkages had to move, assembly had to rotate into position, then everything had to work perfectly in reverse when the lights were turned off. That's a lot of moving parts. Moving parts eventually fail. Owners of older cars know this problem well. Sometimes one headlight would open while the other stayed closed. The motors would stop working entirely. Sometimes the gear would strip. The headlights would become stuck halfway. Repairing these systems wasn't always cheap, and manufacturers didn't like spending money on complicated mechanisms when simpler alternatives existed. Still, complexity alone wasn't enough to kill pop-up headlights. The real problem was just around the corner. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, vehicle safety became a much bigger priority around the world. Engineers started studying what happened when cars struck pedestrians. The results were concerning. Pop-up headlights created hard edges and protruding structures at the front of the vehicle. Imagine walking across the road and being hit by a car. A smooth front end is bad enough, but a raised headlight assembly could make injuries even worse. Government and safety organizations began introducing stricter regulations, and car manufacturers realized future vehicles would need smoother, safer front end designs. Suddenly, pop-up headlights weren't just expensive, they were becoming a safety liability. Designers could already see where things were heading, and many companies started preparing for a future without them. Around the same time, automotive design was changing. Technology allowed manufacturers to build better fixed headlights. Designers no longer needed pop-up mechanisms to create sleek shapes. Instead, they began integrating headlights directly into the bodywork. Clear covers became popular. Complex lens designs appeared. Cars could remain aerodynamic while keeping their headlights permanently visible. This gave designers more freedom. Cars could have sharper lines, more aggressive styling, and fewer mechanical components. Manufacturers loved it. Fewer parts meant lower production costs, lower warranty costs, and fewer failures for customers. The writing was already on the wall. Pop-up headlights were starting to look old-fashioned. Then technology delivered the final blow. Headlights themselves became drastically better. Older headlight systems were relatively large. They needed a lot of space, but newer technologies changed everything. First came improved halogen systems, then HID headlights, then LED headlights, and eventually adaptive lighting systems. Those newer lights could produce more illumination while taking up less space. Manufacturers no longer needed large headlight housings. They could create thin, aggressive light structures integrated directly into the bodywork. Modern headlights also gained features that pop-up systems struggled to support: automatic high beams, cornering lights, adaptive steering functions, matrix LED technology. The future of automotive lighting clearly didn't involve motors lifting headlights out of the hood. Technology had simply moved on. By the late 90s, the end was near. One by one, manufacturers abandoned pop-up headlights. The cars that replaced them often looked more modern and more efficient. Eventually, only a few holdouts remained. One of the last major production cars to use pop-up headlights was the Chevy Corvette C5. Another was a Lotus Esprit. The final generation of the Lotus Esprit ended production in 2004. The Corvettes continued slightly longer. When the Corvette C6 arrived in 2005, the pop-up headlights were gone, and just like that, the era ended. No major manufacturer has brought them back since. For younger drivers, pop-up headlights are now something they've only seen in old photographs, movies, racing games, or YouTube videos. Today, pop-up headlights are gone, not because people stop loving them. In fact, many enthusiasts consider them one of the coolest design features ever created. They disappeared because modern cars demanded different priorities: better safety, reliability, lower costs, technology, and stricter regulations. From an engineering perspective, eliminating them made perfect sense. But from an automotive perspective, something was lost. Cars became faster, safer, more efficient, but maybe just a little less fun. That's why enthusiasts still smile whenever they see an RX-7, Supra, NSX, or Corvette raise its headlights for the night. Not just the lighting system, it's a reminder of a time when cars had a little more character, and perhaps that's why pop-up headlights remain one of the most missed features in automotive history. So what do you think? Should pop-up headlights make a comeback, or are they better left as a legendary piece of automotive history?